Let's talk about movies. Today I want to talk about the Before trilogy. For reasons to do with organization and structure, I could not do three separate reviews for these movies because despite their release date being nearly a decade from each other, I see them as one big movie split into three volumes with very large intermissions. Before Sunrise starts as a rom-com with Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. It's directed by Richard Linklater and co-written by Richard and Kim Krizan. Before Sunrise is not a simple rom-com, nor is it a run-of-the-mill 90s movie that follows along the kind of Hollywood pathway of generic structure. The movie breaks boundaries and offers a fresh and raw insight into a natural romantic encounter. Spoiler warning. It took me a short while to notice, but once I did, it became mesmerizing. The film is one elongated dialogue scene that takes the characters from one place to another as they traipse the colorful yet peaceful streets of Vienna. This, by all intents and purposes, should not work, or at least not work so well. But it does. Why? Characterization. Jesse and Celine work. They have chemistry. They feel like two real people that came across each other due to the ambiguous force of love. Jesse is on his way to the airport to get back to the States after being dumped by his girlfriend in Spain, and Celine is on her way to Paris after visiting her grandmother in Budapest. The fact that they start talking requires no suspension of disbelief. The fact that she got off the train with him to walk around Vienna does, to an extent. But they're young, and young people tend to make spontaneous decisions. They are very similar, but also very different in the way they see the world. They're the same people, circling the same goal, but just from different angles. Jesse is more cynical, more focused on the philosophy of life, and the theory surrounding the concept of love. But he is not certain he believes in it wholeheartedly. He thinks people should live in the moment and do what feels good, but the key takeaway is that he is often performing. And under the veneer of kind of wit, charm, and self-awareness, he wants to believe that love exists. He's a hopeless romantic. Celine is more emotionally attuned. She represents the Parisian view on romance, the purity of it all, but she also worries about the future, about the passage of time. She's worried about being hurt as a result of falling in love, and she abhors the idea of losing her independence. She pushes him, she tests boundaries, and it all weaves together into the reason he so eagerly falls for her. This, however, shifts near the end, when they both decide to meet again in 6 months, and we find out in the second movie that he showed up and she did not. Jesse is hurt, of course, but does not wish to show it. He's been holding on to the bitterness of it all ever since, as he's been kind of living in an unhappy marriage and feeling his time writing about the relationship that might have been. Celine, on the other hand, works to improve the planet. Their lives are very different after 9 years, and they both lean further into who they are. But the chemistry is still there. They are able to do the usual walk and talk throughout Paris this time around. And it feels like 9 years was yesterday. This, by now, is a style in its own right. And it became a motif of this trilogy, especially kind of ending with it in the third movie as they walk from holiday house to hotel. This, to me, says that regardless of who they are or where they are, they can always return to being those two messy people whose worldviews might differ, who might be completely disorganized or depressed, but who will love each other and cherish the moments spent with each other because that is purely and without doubt their genuine selves. Thematic purpose, conflict, and conflict avoidance is a key theme of this trilogy. The movie takes a clear stance when it comes to conflict within relationships. It cannot be avoided. Whereas in the first movie, there is less of it. Conflict picks up more and more from the second movie onwards. Celine has a rant about what she means to the world and what their night together meant to Jesse. She becomes distraught to a mawkish degree, but Jesse does his best to help her through it. In the third movie, the conflict is basically in your face from the beginning. They disagree in the car, they disagree at the table, though subtly. And I picked up on this as I was watching the scene. I remember Celine says something about Henry, Jesse's son, and Jesse is clearly upset. It did not land well for him, but he hides it well from the others. Though Ethan Hawke, being a fantastic actor, does make it apparent from the way his smile gradually retreats and his mouth twitches into a pout. To end with their massive fight at the end sets a new record as far as relationship fights go. They start unloading one onto the other. It is apparent that both held in a lot of things and let them boil to the point of tipping over. And they do tip over, of course, which nearly leads them toward a breakup. This is a fantastic scene, though. I know it's hated by many because it kind of embodies the vulnerability as well as the strength of love. Love isn't something that's always meant to be easy or peaceful or simple. Love can be hard sometimes. Choosing to love the same person despite their flaws, despite your differences, is what solidifies the connection. It's what makes it evolve and become stronger. A lot of people nowadays are afraid of conflict, and a lot of people would rather avoid things or put on an air of agreeableness when in fact that is not how they feel. All in the name of peace, but peace is not beneficial when it hides a problem that should be tackled. Love is about moving forward together, finding ways to get through it together and solving the issue together, rather than simply hoping it will go away. And that, I believe, is the thematic purpose of this trilogy. Dialogue. The dialogue feels natural. It is written expertly to not only convey a seamlessness within the words, as if they were spoken by a human being, all aided by the acting, of course, but there is subtlety and there is subtext folded within the dialogue. The dialogue is the story. The dialogue is part of the theme. It's about communication. Without that, everything is doomed. And it shows that, yes, they talk a lot. They share a lot. Yes, they're vulnerable with each other. But how much of it is helpful? It's natural because they both add their mannerisms and their gesticulations and intonations and everything. But it is worth mentioning that whereas in the first film, the dialogue is more about curiosity and exploration, in the second movie, it's also about reflection. And in the third movie, it comes together into a whole bubble of exploiting insecurities and vulnerabilities and being brutally honest and confrontational. This teaches that it is not just talking that ought to be done, it is how we talk. It's how we say things, how they come across, and how patient we are with our significant other to kind of help them understand what we mean. Time as a character. Time is a character that almost nobody realizes sits at the core of the trilogy. It personifies time by setting the movies apart by 9 years in both real life and in movie time. It is a presence that is felt by the audience and by the characters themselves. We are watching Celine and Jesse erode and evolve in terms of ideals. Their memories become unreliable, as is clearly seen throughout the second and third movie, each grasping at their own version of nostalgia and of moments lived together and otherwise. This is exacerbated in the third film, when they both accuse one another of cheating, and the avoidance is critically pinpointed by the movie as Jesse turns philosophical, circling the question, and Celine leaves because perhaps either admitting the truth or the time it would take to explain herself to Jesse would be so long that she becomes emotionally dysregulated and cannot deal with it. Environment. We start in Vienna, a city that, through its layered streets and nightlife, symbolizes the wandering of the soul, I thought. Endless possibilities and perhaps a meandering sense of anonymity, especially for two strangers in a strange city. In Paris, the atmosphere shifts to a more melancholic, nostalgic, and bittersweet, like the city represents missed chances and tries to compress their love into something that only lasted for one night, when in fact it's been lingering for 9 years within the deepest caverns of their subconscious. Greece was facing turmoil during the time when the movie came out, and this is mirrored in the way the film unfolds. There is a lot of open landscape, but that only adds to the claustrophobic emotions that our characters are layered with. It feels like there is no way out, like they are stuck in a loop, and the only way out is to break the wheel. Cinematography. The long takes are what make this trilogy. Then the walking scenes carry it. It brings motion to a trilogy about two people who feel like they are not moving forward. It is incredibly clever storytelling because the director tells this story through dialogue, as I mentioned before, and had there not been the walking, the movie would have probably not worked as well. For the first two films, we need constant strolling. Our characters are excited, they are vivacious, they want to explore. That comes under the guise of talking. And it feels like we're moving along, moving forward with their relationship. But by the third movie, the movement is more static. There are less front dolly shots. Even the car scene feels stuck because they are boxed in despite the car being in motion. But by now the director has a script and we're interested enough in what will happen. I also believe that the reliance on an aging audience helps to people slow down after a certain age. If you watched Before Sunrise in your early 20s, you'd have been in your late 30s by the time midnight came along. Therefore, more attuned to the nuances of slower pacing. Conclusion. This is a trilogy worth watching. Not because it's a romance or anti-romance, but because it stands for honest romance. Sunrise drives the love forward, Sunset dissects it, and Midnight dismantles it, until it becomes honest and true rather than distrustful. And we see our characters fighting for it at the very end, even after the credits roll, and I certainly, with all candor, believe well after the screen fades to black. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's start a discussion. Until next time.